This is the Brain Lab, a podcast about brain health, cognitive performance, and skills like speed reading that strengthen how we process information. I'm Bryan, and in each episode, we'll translate neuroscience into practical insights that you can use. Hi, I'm Bryan. I'm COO of Infinite Mind, and I'm joined today by our founder, Jeffrey Flamm. Jeff, you've been with Infinite Mind working at it for quite a while now. Do you mind telling us a little bit about how you came into Infinite Mind and how you started the company and just a little bit of your origin story?
Yeah, 25 years ago, I sold a company to ADP that managed benefits, and we were managing benefits for 23 million people. They came along, made us a great offer. It was the right move, so we sold the company. And at the same time, I got a phone call from Japan from a Dr. Kawamuda asking if he could stay at our home when he comes to Utah. And it just happened his sister was our nanny.
Oh, okay.
So I had heard a lot about him from his sister. So when he called and asked if he could stay there because he had meetings in Salt Lake, I said, sure. So I picked him up at the airport, brought him to my home, and I said, tell me what you do. And he says, I have a speed reading company with like over 6 million users. I go, really? Yeah. And I said, show it to me. So he pulled it up and it was all in Japanese. And he said, I'll show you how it works. And he had me read for 1 minute out of a book and then mark how far I went after 1 minute. Then he said, watch this. And for 7 minutes, I watched all these flashing kanjis, Japanese characters, and images on this screen. And then he said, okay, let's test your reading speed again. And after 1 minute, I went twice as far. I was shocked. I was like, wow, this is really cool.
Just in a regular book. You just
just a regular book.
Twice as far.
And I could feel a difference after watching this for 7 minutes. And so I took him to his meeting the next day. The group was interested, but it didn't work out with them. So I wrote to him and said, I'm interested in learning more. So I took a group to Japan and we went and visited the schools that used his speed reading program.
Wow.
And talked with the kids and the teachers. And it was amazing to see how fast these kids were reading that had done it for a while. I reached out to him and said, I'm really interested in taking this into America. I want my kids to use it. I want to use it. And so we negotiated and came up with an agreement for me to have the rights to all English-speaking countries. So in 1998, started building it, and in 2000, we were ready to go to market.
So you've been at this for a while.
Yeah, we've been doing it 25 years now.
I want to take a quick second to talk about why, though, this product. I mean, you just came off of a big success. You were set to probably pick whatever you wanted to do, and this is the thing you picked. And I want to dig into that just for a second because if I recall correctly, reading was not really your thing. I mean, you had some challenges with it, and your history, your past really wasn't in reading. Can you tell us a little bit about what reading was like and why maybe the difference that you felt when you used the program was meaningful to you?
I think we gravitate to the things we're interested in and that we need in life. And I was a terrible reader. When he tested my speed, I was 170 words a minute. I mean, that's junior high level. And I looked back, why was I a terrible reader? Well, when I was in grade school, I was diagnosed with amblyopia, lazy eye. So they patched my eye from first grade to fourth grade, and I had this patch on, right? But it was too late. They have to catch it before age 3 to change it around. They didn't, so I was basically blind to one eye. So when I would read, this side is out of focus, this side's in focus. Mm-hmm. And what that does is it doesn't allow you to track correctly when you read.
Okay.
So you can't keep track of what line you're on. So the only way I could tell where I am in the book is use my hand or a ruler to go down the page. So I wasn't a good reader, and reading was painful. The reason it was painful is if I read more than 10 minutes, I would have a headache. And it's because my eyes didn't track correctly and one was out of focus.
So like eye strain?
Yeah, it was terrible eye strain. So It was painful. I never read a book. I never read an entire book. And so when I found this program and did it, I actually noticed quickly within a couple weeks, I didn't have headaches anymore.
Wow.
And so it was really transformational to me. And when something's transformational in your own life, you become a total disciple of it, right? You want to go out and share it with others. And especially with my kids, I wanted my kids to be incredible readers because reading is everything in life.
Right. Now, you have you have when we're here, we see your family here. You've got a big family, right? And you were a man of business. You were gone a lot. You were doing your best to support the family, and that left your wife to take care of everything. And I imagine that education was probably a primary concern for you since you were gone so much and your wife had a lot to handle. So I can understand why this would be such a big deal for you to say, I want my kids to have this. Because reading, and we talk about this all the time, reading is the foundation of education. It's the beginning of everything. So tell us a little more. So you started out, you launched it in 2000, you turned it into software, you had the rights, you said, to all English-speaking countries. Tell us a little bit about from there. I mean, we're here now in 2025. We've got a mobile app. What's a short version of the story from 2000 to 2025? All
right. Well, first, we build it for companies, for all executives to learn to read faster. Because if you're not reading a book a week as an executive, you're not really visionary for the company, helping lead the company where they should go. Okay. You need to be always reading or you'll get left behind by competition. So I built it first for companies, and we tested it in several companies and had great results. So they were looking at taking it national. And then in 2001, the tech bubble burst and the economy kind of crashed.
Right.
And so all of them put it on hold. Big companies, when their profit margins are challenged, they cut marketing and training. Right. Those are the first two things that get cut because it doesn't really affect it helps their profitability without really affecting them greatly. So those things got put on hold. So I didn't know what to do. I'd already spent a couple $1 million building the program. So I decided to do an infomercial. So I did an infomercial myself the first year and figured out who the audience is, who is buying this product. Mm-hmm. And I get a phone call a few months after we aired, and a lady named Pam Dauber called me. She said, "Is this Jeff?" I go, "Yeah." She said, "Well, hi, this is Pam Dauber. How are you?" And I go, "Great." I just wanted to call and tell you how Mark and I have felt about your program. We have two teenage sons, one's in junior high, one's in high school. Both were struggling in school. I bought your product from the infomercial, and my kids both have gone up to A students. So I wondered how I can help you. And I said, "Just write me a testimonial.
Right.
I'll put it on the website." She said, "Well, I'd like to do more than just a testimonial. Can't I help you on your infomercial?" I said, "Well, we interview the testimonials, the ones that are good, we film, and then the best of those we put in the infomercial." Right. And she said, "Well, do you know who I am?" I said, "Have we met?" She said, "No, we haven't met, but I was Mindy in Mork and Mindy." Well, I'm not really a star watcher, so I didn't know who Pam Dauber was. And I said, "Well, that would be great." So we met. We filmed the next 6 seasons together and sold almost 1 million of these speed reading programs. And she was passionate about it because she saw how much it changed the lives of her 2 boys. Right. So that's really how it became mainstream, with probably 2 million users.
Right. Couple per package and about 2 million users. Yeah, that's amazing. Pam Dauber is quite the personality. So it's really cool that you were able to grab that and harness that for your business. But I think it speaks even more to the power of the product that someone of that profile would be willing to put their name behind it.
Right.
I think that's a big deal.
And especially her husband's Mark Harmon, was NCIS. And,
right.
And she said, "We've never endorsed a product before, but we've never seen one that changed our kids' lives so quickly."
Wow.
So that's kind of how we went mainstream.
Right. And so, yeah. And then, you've had the speed reading program for a while. Now, I came in the company about 14 years ago, and we were kind of at this point where we were coming out of a recession. 2008 into 2011 it kind of was the recession. And I came into the company right about that time, and we started realizing, interestingly, that the market wasn't talking as much about speed reading anymore, but there was a lot of conversation about brain health and brain training. And this is kind of when we started to see this market emerge, partly because the baby boomer generation was starting to age out of the workplace, and they were starting to worry about their longevity and their health, and they had the time to actually put into those kinds of things. And so this market of brain training began to emerge. And so you and I sat down at some point, well, now it's been a few years, and said, the online thing and the speed reading thing is not the only thing we really do. What we really have is a brain training product. And I wanted to take just a quick second and talk about what the difference is between speed reading and brain training, and even where the crossover is between the two. Can you tell us about that?
Well, Dr. Kalmuta had told me this will change the brain more than anything. And the way he created it is back in the 70s, functional MRIs were created where they could track what's going on with the brain.
Right.
And Dr. Kalmuta started reading everything about that because he was an educator, and he had 10 children, which is unusual in Japan. To have 10 kids, right?
That's very unusual.
And because he had a double PhD in education, everything he thought about was education. How do I teach people to learn? And he realized when he tracked the studies on fMRIs is our brain fires as a whole brain until about age 8. We're in the discovery mode. So everything's functioning, both left side and right side, equally until we're about age 8. And from then on, it starts becoming more left brain. We're not using the creativity as much. By age 18, 90% of our brain function is probably left brain, unless you're a very right brain person. So he thought, how do I change it back to where everyone can be a great learner and engage their entire brain? And he came up with this theory that if I do a left brain exercise, which is reading, and then do a right brain exercise, which is imaging, and do that back and forth, that I can get the brain to fire as a whole brain again. So he created this program that did that. And when we had our first fMRI done at Caltech in Pasadena, it's exactly what happened. We had a student come in and read and did a functional MRI while they're reading. The only thing that's firing is the Broca's area, just above the left ear. That's the reading center of the brain.
Right.
But when they tested them after using Infinite Mind, the whole brain was firing. And it showed it was like 1,500% more brain function going on. So then we realized this is far more than speed reading.
Right.
It's really a brain product. So later, in 2013, we had a study done at the University of Utah under the direction of Dr. Jeff Anderson, Department of Neurology. And he did a study with 30 adolescent girls, half of them autistic.
Right.
And they tested their brain function reading, and 8 weeks later after using Infinite Mind, and it was the same number. It was 1,500% more brain function. So that's the point we realized everyone needs this, especially baby boomers. Not just young people that want to read better and do way better in school, but older people who are worried about brain fog and cognitive decline. Mm-hmm. Okay. How do we improve that? And we found our program really does that.
Right. And it's an interesting, it's weird to be in a company that has such a broad possible demographic, because any marketer will tell you should always niche down and pick one audience, right?
Right.
But when we are trying to talk to people about our product, they always say, well, who's this for? And we're always saying, well, if you can read, it's for you. And so I always say, well, if you're in second grade or more, you should be using this product.
Exactly.
Because it's affecting your reading, yes, like you said, but it's also affecting your brain. And, we're at an interesting point in history where the largest demographic in the history of the world, we call them the baby boomer generation, they're all aging out of the workforce, and they're all getting to this point where their health is a major concern. But we're also seeing an increase in dementia and Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. And it's alarming. It's alarming because demographically it's happening, but it's alarming to people who are at risk, because when you have those things in your life, it's not just that it starts with brain fog. It starts with, senior moments, but it progresses to the point that you lose your identity. If it progresses far enough, you're not who you were before. And that's terrifying. And so now they're looking for ways to combat that and fight back against that. And so I like to look at it as saying, we have a product that we've shown multiple times increases brain activity. And that's what fights this. It's keeping the neural pathways active and healthy, and even forming new ones. And so I love that you took the time that early on to be aware of that, and even to shift and pivot a little bit and say we're more than speed reading. But there's a crossover here, and it's speed reading with brain training to activate the whole brain. I think that's powerful.
Yeah, it's really good. And when I realized how much it can help people is I took 8 people in my neighborhood over age 70. Said, I want you to do this for 8 weeks and see what it does for your cognitive function. So what we did is we did a test where they did reading, and we measured their speed and comprehension at the beginning before they used the product. And then we had them do a matrix of times tables. And they had to fill in all the boxes. The numbers were down this way, horizontally and vertically, and they had to fill in every box. And we timed how long it took them to complete that exercise. And then we gave them 20 words to look at for 3 minutes, and then had them identify which words they had seen, but from a big list. And then what we did is 8 weeks later, after using the program, we did the test again. And on everything, they almost doubled their effectiveness in just 8 weeks. So I knew we really had something besides just the science, scientific studies, that we had a small group, but empirical evidence that it helped people. So that's when we decided, let's start reaching out to all baby boomers and people who have had any brain injuries. If they've had concussions, if they'll send them to special places where they spend a lot of money, like thousands of dollars, and they have them watch things that are flashing with sounds. Mm-hmm. And they're paying a lot of money for that. And it's to get both sides of the brain working again together. And we found our product does that. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars.
Right.
And what happened is during COVID, I noticed kids aren't reading. They're all getting behind in reading. And we track it because we're online now. So we see everybody's scores and we kind of see what's happening. And we noticed kids' scores are not as high as they used to be. So we made a free version and put it out in the App Store so everybody can use it without any reason not to. At least it's not a financial reason that they don't use it. And then we just recently released a premium version that people can upgrade that's more game-based, more engaging, has a lot more to it. So if they want to do even more, they can upgrade to premium and have a more robust learning experience. But the free version works for everybody.
Right. And I think it's cool to mention that this project, Infinite Mind as a company, is very much a passion project for you. I mean, you've seen it change your life. I'm sure we'll talk about how it's changed your kids' lives, your wife's life. All of these people have been affected. Your neighborhood. I love that you're the mad scientist going out and getting your family and friends to test for you. It's awesome. But you have such a passion for this because you've seen it affect so many lives that you took what you originally sold on the infomercial all those years ago and you packaged it up and said, we're going to take this original product and we're putting it for free on the App Store. Everything we originally did, all the things that people got to do over the years at a price they were buying on the infomercial can now be gotten for free. That basic program is there. We just have added some things now so that we can generate revenue based on this. But you want everyone, I mean, you've said it to me a million times, but you want everyone on this, right? I mean, how do you see this going out into the world?
I think word of mouth, as people see what it does for them and their kids, they talk about it with others. But the key is, I tell people, it's not like a video game your kids are going to be sitting up all night doing. It's not that. It's exercise.
Right.
It's brain exercise.
It's a gym for the brain.
So it's a gym for the brain. So it's like when you go to the gym, you're doing the treadmill, you're lifting weights. It's kind of the same thing. You shake it up a little. Well, ours is similar. We change the exercises. They're similar, but the reading content changes, the speed changes, the different games in between and the imaging changes. But it's not going to be really, really engaging that they want to do it every day the rest of their lives. It's not that. It's training. So I say incentivize your kids. And that's what I did with my kids, came up with an incentive. If you do it so much, you get some rewards. So my kids did it regularly and they became really good readers and scored high on the ACT. One of them wasn't into it. He goes, it doesn't matter. I don't need to do it. He didn't score as high on the ACT. Later, he came to work in our call center. They had to do it every day before they went on the phones. He worked there for a couple of years and went from reading below 200 words a minute to over 1,400 words a minute. I mean, it was life-changing. So when he took the GMAT test, he got in the 700s, in the top 1 percentile, and ended up getting his master's degree at Oxford in England. I mean, it's very, very difficult to get into Oxford anyway. They only take so many hundred people from the U.S. a year. So to get into Oxford is really key. So it showed the power of the program. It helped all my kids that did it when they were in school.
Right.
But even my one son that didn't do it till later, it made a huge difference in his educational success.
That's amazing. Oxford is no joke.
No, it's serious, right?
Yeah. Okay, let's take a quick second. I wanted to ask you, I mean, you've hinted at it a little bit, but you've spent some time in patenting certain intellectual properties and techniques that are what set our training apart from others. Can you tell us what the patents were and what the focus of those things is, and then maybe we can get into a little bit more of the science?
Yeah, there were 2 patents we got back at the inception of the company. And the 2 were, first was alternating a left brain and a right brain exercise. So reading, imaging. We got that patented. The second thing that really works effectively in brain training, they call it deep brain training, is you push the brain, make something really difficult, and then that pushes the brain to expand and learn more. So it's like, I give an example of somebody that's practicing basketball. They'll put weights around their ankles and have them do jump shots. And they take the weights off, they'll jump higher. They give them a medicine ball, heavy ball to throw back and forth. Then give them a regular basketball, they'll throw it further. So it pushes them, makes something really hard. And when they go back to something easier, it seems really easy, right? And so we did the same thing with Infinite Mind. It starts at 10% above where you read the first time you do it. It tests your reading speed. So it's going to start feeding you reading at 10% above where you're at. And then it goes up to 1.5 times where you were, and then just double. So it goes slow, fast, and then medium. So when it goes much faster than where you're currently reading, it's hard for you to keep up. But it drops down to where double, where you started, it's pretty easy to do. So you notice your progress right from the beginning.
Right. And that goes back to even your very first experience with the product. You were reading, you said it around 170 words a minute.
Right.
And then you went through this experience of the alternating images and the variable speed training where you go slow, then fast, then back down to a medium speed. And he timed you. And what you found was ultimately you got twice as far in one session, reading wise, as far as word count, than you had before you had started, right?
Right.
Right. And is that reaction typical? I mean, do you see all of the users doing that, or how many people really see those kinds of results or can see those results?
Well, we used to guarantee the product always on the infomercial. If you didn't double your speed doing 40 sessions, we'd give you your money back. And when we could track it online, anybody that did that many sessions always doubled or tripled their speed, right? They went way up. So it was an easy guarantee to stand behind because it does work. But you go back and look, and it really is relevant to how much you do it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you do it a lot, you get really good. But it's like anything else. Piano, a foreign language, how much do you do it? If you're all in, you're going to get really good at it. And it's the same on Infinite Mind.
Yeah. I like to say it's a lot like the gym. You can say you work out, but if you're only going once a month, you're not going to see a change. But if you go every day, you go 5 times a week, you're going to see a change. Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about Infinite Mind, the science, the origin story, your story. That's some really great stuff. I appreciate it. Before we wrap up on the science part of it completely, I wanted to ask you, for someone who's going to do the training, for someone who's going to go in and use Infinite Mind, what kind of a commitment are they making in terms of daily, weekly? How long should they do it for? What do you recommend?
The program only takes 7 minutes a day. Now, the first time you download it, it's going to be a little longer because it has you read a 3 or 4 page story and has 10 questions. We're measuring both speed and comprehension. So we come up with what's called your effective reading speed. It's a multiple of the two. So if you're reading at 200 words a minute, but you're getting 50% comprehension, 50% of the 200 is 100. So your effective reading speed's 100. But if you get up to 500 or 600, say 600 words a minute with 70% comprehension, now your effective reading speed's 420. That's a big difference. 100 effective reading speed to 420, huge. How long does that take? Usually 40 sessions. People usually will double or triple their speed in 40 sessions. So I say do it at least 5 times a week, 7 minutes a day, do 40 sessions, and then decide if you want to keep going.
Right.
And if you like it and you want to get even better, you can upgrade the premium that has a lot more content more games. It's a little more engaging, and it'll keep you going for a longer time.
But it's not that big of a commitment if you think about it. I mean, how many things do you do in a day for 5 minutes every day of your life?
Yeah. You waste a lot of time on social media.
Right. Can you trade 5 minutes, 7 minutes of that a day for your brain health? I think that's a pretty fair trade, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great.
So it's called Infinite Mind Brain Exercises. Where can they find it and who is it for?
Just in the App Store, if you put in Infinite Mind Brain Exercises, you're going to have something pop up first, and it's not us. Always know when you're searching for something, the first thing that pops up is somebody that's paying a lot of money for that spot.
Yeah.
They're wanting your audience. So it's going to be the second one that shows up as a light bulb. And our little mascot, his name's Watson, because we measure your watts. You know, are you getting to be a brighter bulb, light bulb? Are you a 20-watt light bulb? Are you a 100-watt light bulb? And that's the great thing about Infinite Mind. It's measuring as you go how you're doing, and you'll see a difference.
And who should use it?
You know, everyone that has kids in school, if you want to save a ton of money, incentivize your kids to do this regularly. I had my kids do it for several years, and that's why they did so well. And if they get scholarships, it saves you thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. Because the scholarship nowadays, well, tuition nowadays is going to run anywhere from $3,000 on up, depending on what school you go to, per semester.
And much higher.
Not including books and living expenses if you're away from home, right? Very big expense, but tuition alone is going to be tens of thousands of dollars to get a college degree. That's after-tax dollars. You got to earn twice that much by the time you pay all your taxes of every kind, and have that to spend on tuition. So I say to people, the best investment you'll make on your kids' education is have them do Infinite Mind.
Absolutely. You know, I'd also say anybody who's worried about their brain health, if you're getting to the point where maybe you're forgetting a name or two, or you can't remember where you put your car keys, and it's starting to happen more regularly, I'd say this product's for you. Because same thing. I mean, it takes you 7 minutes a day to preserve your brain health and give yourself longevity that otherwise you might lose. So I think there's a great opportunity there for people who are experiencing that.
I'm 73 years old, right? And because I use it regularly, I stay pretty on top of my game. I notice if I go a while without using it, I start experiencing brain fog. So that's my own experience as a guy that's getting older. Mm-hmm. It's really helped me. My other tip would be, over the years, I've had a number of businesses I've succeeded in, and I sit on a lot of boards. And what I've found is people never let you go from a board if you're the one that adds the most.
If you're the idea
in the
guy.
meeting, the idea guy. I read so many books. Every time I go to a meeting, I have tons of ideas of what we can do to better that organization. And it comes from reading. I try to read a book a week and listen to one on an Audible book each week. So I try to do both and try to do 100 books a year. And I usually get between 75 and 100 in a year.
Wow.
And it's a game changer because I can sit down and talk to anybody about anything, and I probably read about it.
Right. That's amazing.
If you or anybody in your family has challenges with reading, you're going to want to tune in today. We're going to talk about how the brain learns to read and the different styles and the different problems people have learning to read correctly. So, Bryan, you've been doing this for quite a long time together.
Yeah.
And you've read Dr. Souza's book.
Right.
About how the brain learns to read. Tell us about that and why some people that are dyslexic or have ADHD or other things, they read differently. Let's talk about that.
Well, okay, let's back up one step before that and just talk about the brain and how it evolved into reading. Because I think it's really interesting and it's actually informative to talk about how we change the way we do this, right? And that's what we're kind of about here at Infinite Mind. So, when you read, and you'll be able to tell this story too, because you've done the fMRI studies at Caltech and at the University of Utah. But when we learn to read, the part of our brain that gets engaged is on the left side of our brain. It's called Broca's area. That's the primary area. And then it's also supported by the Wernicke's area. Those are language centers. Now, the interesting thing about those being language centers of the brain is they're auditory. So when we evolved as humans and we started to speak, we first used spoken language. And so our brains evolved to hear language. That's a linear, like sequential way of gathering information, right? You can only hear as fast as I speak. And so that's how Broca's and Wernicke's area as language centers evolved in the brain. Well, fast forward several thousand years and we invent written language. And because we've already evolved our brains so much, and this is language and we learn it by speaking, we just kind of crammed reading in there with the language centers, even though it's actually a visual exercise. And so there's something of a slight disconnect or a cross wiring in the way that we process information when we read. And that's an interesting thing about the way our brains evolve. But here's what happens. Well, when we learn to read, when we very first start learning to read as children, we start in the classroom or maybe on a parent's lap, but it's letters, one at a time, then letters a few at a time, then syllables, then words, right?
Right.
But the way we do it is sounding it out because it's a spoken language. And so it's a very practical way of learning to read. The red ball, right? That makes sense. That's a good way to learn. The problem is that as we age, our brains become more advanced, our ability to perform increases, but because we have spent so much time really hounding this sound the words out, it's a very hard habit to break, but our brains have moved past that. And so we've got this stunting in the way we take in information when we're reading. And so the way we evolved, it makes sense. The way we learn to read makes sense, but staying in that same methodology doesn't make sense.
That's right. They call it subvocalization.
Right.
Where you vocalize under your voice, right? Silently. You're saying each word in your mind. So did you know that people read at the speed they speak?
Yeah. And that to me is an interesting fact. And the reason is, though, because we're hearing ourselves speak.
Right.
So how fast do most people speak?
Most people are around 200 words a minute.
Or less.
Or less.
200 words a minute is fast.
An adult is usually around 200 words a minute.
Right. And so if you're reading a book and you're waiting for yourself to talk, you are slow because you are as fast as you speak. And if you are a more deliberate speaker, you're likely a slower reader. But while I'm talking, I guarantee you, your brain's thinking about other things, right? But it's the same thing when we read, but worse, because our brains can process so much information so rapidly. I mean, you think about all the things our brains maintain for us while we're doing any given thing. Our hearts continue to beat, our lungs continue to breathe, our body functions. But at the same time as doing all of that, we're working. And at the same time as we're doing that, we're thinking about the schedule for later today or what's on the menu, or, those kinds of things. Our brains are highly capable, very powerful. And yet when we read, we narrow its focus down to literally 3 letters at a time. It's really hard. That's why you asked the question at the beginning, do you or anyone you know struggle with reading? That's why. Your brain, 1,000,000 miles an hour. ADHD, 1.5 million, right? But then you try and get them to sit down and focus on reading, and it's very hard because we've created this, we've evolved to do this in a way that's very, very slow and deliberate. Again, a good way to learn, but we've moved past that in terms of our brains and our growth and our age. And so it becomes a bit of a stumbling block. And that's what Infinite Mind seeks to overcome, at least as far as reading is concerned, is overcoming that subvocalization and getting you to the point that you see and process information more rapidly.
Right. The way I say to people is they go, I don't know if I'm a fast reader or not. I said, let me ask you this question. When you watch a movie with subtitles, can you keep up? If it's the news and you see subtitles at the gym because you don't have your headphones, can you read them? Because that's the speed somebody's speaking. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people can't keep up with subtitles. That says they're subpar on reading for sure. Okay. Right. So anybody that's having struggles with that, they need to get on an Infinite Mind. And then subtitles become very easy. And if you'll notice, if you're ever watching a foreign film with subtitles, it's really hard at first, but after a while, you're watching the movie, you're hardly even noticing you're reading. So you adapt to it. You learn quickly how to read subtitles. And it's the same with Infinite Mind. Once you learn to read fast and you go back and test yourself later, even if you haven't used it for a few years, you go back and test yourself. And maybe you started at 200 words a minute, you get up to 700. I test people 5 years later, they're around 400. They're still twice as fast as the average person, even though they've slid back somewhat because they haven't used it for a while. I say get back on it. Anybody who's taken a speed reading class in college, some people even were taught it in grade school. They get on Infinite Mind, it comes back like that, only even more powerfully. because it's engaging more of the brain than traditional speed reading. So again, to become a good reader, you've got to overcome subvocalization.
Right. And you've got to engage the brain. So have you ever had the experience where you're reading a book and your eyes are going over the words, every single one, right? But you lose track of what you're reading and your mind wanders and thinks about a million different things, right? And then you get to the bottom of the page and you think, oh my heck, I don't even know what I just read. Has that ever happened to you?
That happens.
Yeah,
a lot.
Absolutely. Well, that's because, again, your brain is thinking faster than you're capable of reading. That's why speed reading is actually a really effective way of improving academic performance amongst young children, because they have ADHD or they are actively minded and they are going faster than they can read, especially in those formative years when they're very first starting to read. And so reading becomes this drudgery to them because it's just so boring. And I've got a million other things going on in my head that are way more entertaining. And so when we teach them speed reading and we activate their brains to actually record and process that information and turn it into knowledge more rapidly, their brain is engaged. Whereas before they were wandering off thinking about video games or, recess or whatever else they were going to be doing. Now we've pulled their whole brain into the reading experience and we've given them something that they can process at the speed they can think. And then they get engaged. And when you watch a child who struggles with reading suddenly say, oh, I get this. I don't just get this, I enjoy this. You start to see transformation. And it changes everything about the way they perform in school. It changes their personality. It changes their lives at home. Why do you think that is? Because suddenly they feel confident. Where before they were frustrated. I'm not a good reader. I'm not a good student. They start to act out in class. They start to be unruly students because they're bored.
Right.
Then you give them something they can focus on and they learn it. And then you say, oh, what's the answers to this quiz? And they answer the quiz right because they know and they remember. Suddenly their entire identity has changed.
Yeah. They have confidence, right?
Right.
If you're a good reader, you're a confident learner.
Right.
You're not afraid to take tests. And what I tell people, probably the most powerful thing about Infinite Mind is if you double your reading speed and you increase your comprehension as well, which it does both, and we measure both.
Right.
You go and take a test like a standardized test, ACT, SAT. Okay, they're timed tests. Most people, they get to a section and they're running out of time. They're guessing. So they'll do pretty well in the beginning of the test. As the test goes on, their scores start dropping. Why? Anxiety sets in. Adrenaline starts racing through the blood. When you feel anxious, nervous, you get that fight or flight serum is racing through the body. It pulls the blood away from the brain to your extremities. So if you're in a test and you're feeling anxiety, you can read that question 3 times and not know what it's asking because your brain isn't functioning very well. So the best thing about Infinite Mind is once you read fast, you can get through all the tests on the things you feel confident and then spend half of the test time going through the ones you're not sure of and having time to think through them without stress, and it pulls your scores way up. So what we normally see is scores between 21 and 27% increase after using Infinite Mind for 8 weeks. If they go take a national test, do Infinite Mind 8 weeks and you'll go raise your score, usually 22 to 25% in the whole test.
I think it's important to pause there because when you look at the news reports and people talk about state report cards on education and things like that, you'll see reports that are touting 8% gains, 10% gains in student accomplishment at school on standardized testing or in-class performance or any of these other things. We're talking about over 20% on an average. Some students are going to do more. That kind of transition from lower performance to higher performance is literally the difference between I'm not going to college and I'm going to college on a scholarship. It's the difference between I am not a good student to I am a master student. I mean, it's transformational. And it's interesting too, because you talk about those test performance scores. It's not reading that's changing. Reading as a skill set isn't generally actually measured in most standardized tests. It's right. Language arts, mathematics, and science.
Right.
So why is that? Because if you can read the material and not stress about even not have to worry first about what it's even saying, but you can read it and understand, and you've learned the material with a product like Infinite Mind, where it helps you read and process and store that information, it's available for you to use. You talked about adrenaline, and that is a major academic killer, 100%. You look at the clock and you say, I'm running out of time. Adrenaline enters the system, like you said, the blood drains out of your head, and you can't think. We literally use blood and oxygen to process thought. And so if you lose those precious resources because your adrenaline is pulling it all to your body for fight or flight, that's an evolutionary response to threat, right? Then you can't do things like higher level reasoning and problem solving and those kinds of functioning things. And so your test performance goes down. I've talked to more than one parent. I mean, when I say more than one, I've talked to many parents of our customers who have said, I was at my wit's end because Johnny is a great student. He loves school, but he is not a good test taker. And we're worried about him going to school. We want him to go from high school into college, but he doesn't think he can do it. And we put them on Infinite Mind, and suddenly his test scores went up. Why was that? Why did his test scores change? And I explained what I told you. They're not just reading better. They're processing information, they're retaining information, and they're utilizing it. They're synthesizing what they read into knowledge that becomes usable. Reading is one thing. Knowing is how you make information useful.
Yeah, to your point, the thing I've found over the years of doing Infinite Mind, now 25 plus years, is I talk to people all the time that have kids that were straight A students, had a 4.0, and they scored a 25, 24, 20, 28 on the ACT. To get into one of the major universities they want to get in, that you have to have a 3.9 GPA and you have to have it above a 30 on the ACT. A 36 is a perfect score, but you have to have above a 30. I say you put your kid on that for 8 weeks, have them do it every day, and go back and take the test. Most of them get above a 30 the second time. In fact, we had one kid, his name's Christian. He had gotten a 30 on the ACT. He went and did Infinite Mind for 2 months and went back and took it and got a perfect score. He got a 36.
Wow.
And his dad was so amazed that they had me come in and put his whole company on it because of the results his son saw on his ACT scores. So again, little investment for huge return. Right.
Yeah. So kind of circling back to the beginning, if you or someone you know struggles with reading, it's something, there's something you can do about it. You're not stuck.
Right.
There's something you can do about it. And it's 7 minutes of exercise every day. If you do that before you do your homework, you unlock your reading, you unlock your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes homework so much easier. I tell people, they say, when should I do it? He said, right before you do your homework, if you're a kid. Do it, and it just gets the brain going, and you'll learn much better. You'll go faster. You'll stay focused. Your mind won't wander so much because it's based on speed. If the brain can think of hundreds of thoughts a minute, hundreds, and yet if you're reading slow, your brain's going all over.
Right.
But once you get reading at a fast speed, the brain stays very focused, and so less distraction. So I tell them, do it right before your homework. And the other thing we have on our premium version is called snap sessions.
Right.
Once you've done Infinite Mind for a month or two, and you just want to do a brush up, you don't want to do a full 7 minutes, you go in and do a snap session. You can choose 1, 2, or 3 minutes, and it does the exercises just like that for a minute, 2 minutes, or 3 minutes. So you do that before you study or before you read a book, and your efficacy goes way up.
Right. Okay. So what's something we've talked about a lot of things here. What's your recommendation to parents? I mean, what are the signs that you need this, and what are the steps to really make this an effective tool for you and your family?
If your kids are getting good grades but struggling on tests, absolutely need it. If your kids, you want them to get a scholarship, get your kids on, have them do it, not just for a few months, have them do it as a regular thing throughout their life, and they will be a top performer in their school. And if you're an adult and subtitles are a challenge for you, you need it.
Yeah.
So get on it and you'll see a difference within a few weeks.
And I'd add to that too, if you have children who struggle reading, maybe they're not even good in school. This is for them, absolutely. I was that kid. I was not a good student. I didn't read well. I didn't have any confidence whatsoever. I wished I'd had something like this when I was that age, because reading was what unlocked my kind of superpower, my mind and my ability to apply myself. But it took me a long time to learn it because I didn't have a tool like Infinite Mind. Yeah. So if you've got kids who are struggling, now is the time. Don't wait. And if you're a professional, or if you're someone working and in the workplace, I would say you need a product like this, because emails are already suck too much of our time away out of our lives. Spreadsheets, contracts, legal documents, books we should all be keeping up on. All of this stuff that we know we should be doing comes back to reading. And if we're not good readers, we can't succeed in our careers the way we want to. We can't be adults the way we want to. We can't even relax the way we want to, because we can't sit down with a good book and enjoy it. Okay. So it's a product that I wouldn't wait for. And it's something that I think benefits entire families.
And then one last tip I'd give our listeners, if they have a young family, young children, what I started doing with my kids, because I wasn't a good reader, I wanted them to be good readers. So I had what was called the reading couch. And every night at 8:30, I would line the kids up on the reading couch and we would read books. We'd read kids' books. We'd read Bible books for kids. We'd read different stories. So I taught my kids a ton of stuff. We'd rotate through what we read. And I would sometimes just tell them stories about when I was a boy, when my dad was a boy. And you can see here's a picture of my family. This is a few years ago. And they all became great readers because, number one, I taught them to love reading when they were young. And then I gave them a tool so they were the best readers. Awesome. So that's the tip. Start a reading couch with your kids, and then once they're in second grade, get them on Infinite Mind.
All right. Well, Jeff, it's nice to visit with you today. Everybody, appreciate your time. Thank you for listening, and we'll look forward to the next episode.
That's great.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to The Brain Lab. If you're interested in putting today's science into practice, you can explore more at Infinite Mind. Until next time, keep training your brain.